This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
We all know it doesn't take money to be happy. Money is not what we were always taught that it was anyway. And as it turns out, we shouldn't save it the way we were always taught either. So what is true wealth? And is money even involved in that? Well, Josh Tolley presents some thought-provoking ways to rethink what it means to be wealthy, because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live.
As they take this message out into the world.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. I hope you are learning some enlightening things in our series with Josh Tolley. I certainly did when we did this interview. Wow. And tonight is the third of 4 episodes, What is Wealth? And surprisingly, it may have absolutely nothing to do with actual money. Josh Tolley explains in the third of our 4-episode series, the parable of the talents. Now, before we get to that, it is the second Shabbat of the 10th month on the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. And here with an important message about about the end of year Gregorian calendar is my co-host. Not my calendar, but my co-host, Ted Clayton.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome everybody to Shabbat Night Live. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great time to be here at A Rood Awakening right now.
It is. And you know, Ted, we've got 1 week to the end of the year.
Yes.
We're making all kinds of plans, all kinds of meetings are going on, and we're like,
Yes.
you know, we'd like to be able to talk about all this stuff. We'd like to be able to do this and that.
Yep.
But we have to see what the bank account looks like on
Yeah.
December 31st, don't we?
Yes, we do. And Scott, you know, the funny thing is we had this campaign for Israel. You know, October 7th was an ominous time in the history of Israel, and we felt compelled to raise money for the people who had lost their homes and for the people who had lost their loved ones in this troubling time. You know, widows, orphans, families were just torn apart. And so many lives were changed on that day, and we felt it important for us to be able to support Israel. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's an important time for you to support this ministry. Michael has been, over the last 40 years, teaching truth to all of the nations. And ladies and gentlemen, it's this time of year, this end of year giving season, as it were, that we're in the process of planning 2024. We've got a lot of things coming up. We've got special events coming your way, like Passover, for an example, and also Yom Teruah this year. So we're going to be doing those special events and more. 2023, Scott, was a big year for us here at A Rood Awakening because of the chronological Gospels.
Yes.
There was an effort, and successfully, I may say, to create a new second edition of the chronological Gospels. Michael, when he did the chronological Gospels, he had some visions of doing some things more to add to the chronological Gospels. And we were just in a meeting, and I said to Michael, why not? Let's just go ahead and do a second edition chronological Gospels and add the things that you wanted to add but didn't get to add when you made the original chronological Gospels. And we've done that, and ladies and gentlemen, not only have we done that, but we have also created a Spanish version of the chronological Gospels that is in book form
Print
now.
form, yeah, for the
Print
first
form.
time.
For the first time. Ladies and gentlemen, we had 500 original books that were gone in less than 14 days for the Spanish world. So the Spanish world is absolutely hungry for the truth, and the chronological Gospels gives them that truth. And we've got some new news too, Scott. The chronological Gospels in written form in Chinese is coming out. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are over 4 billion Asians in the world and hungry for the truth, hungry to know, and they just worship gods of sticks and stones. To be honest with you, is a good way of saying it. And ladies and gentlemen, to get the true gospel to this part of the world is incredible. That's one of the things we want to do in 2024.
And we have people helping us too, like Paul Shea.
Yeah, with Kingdom for Jesus Ministries.
Strong ministry that we tie in with, and they have all the connections. We work with them back and forth on the calendar every year, and they just can't wait to get this in their hands because that is going to be a game changer for them, and they know how to get it into the places that we don't understand.
And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's the end of the year, and you can either give your money to, as they say, to Uncle Sam for taxes at the end of the year, or you can give a tax-deductible donation to Rood Awakening International, and we can do something important with it. We can take the gospel throughout the world. Folks, we have teachers come in and just do a fantastic, fantastic job. But we also have Michael's legacy teachings, is what we call them, and they are still as hot as ever.
Well, sometimes they're even more relevant because he was speaking just what Yehovah was telling you to, and now it's coming true.
And I really think Michael, in a way, was a prophet, or is a prophet in a way, because all of the stuff that he taught back when it was like From Here to Eternity, that series, 33 DVDs, it was prophetic because we're living that time right now that he was talking about back then with those teachings. So it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that you help us continue to take the gospel to all the world. It has never been in need more than it is right now, ladies and gentlemen. So we really thank you. We appreciate your sacrificial giving. And Michael wanted me to say he appreciates you standing with him at this time.
And you know, sometimes folks see our programs, you know, Ted, and they, like for example, when the whole thing with Israel erupted, we were just about to start, I think we just started, Joel Richardson's series. And people say, wow, how did you, I had people ask me, how did you get it so timely? Guys, we taped that last year.
Oh yeah, months.
November of last year, and we decided to put it on like weeks and weeks before the thing with Israel ever happened. There's no way we would have known that that was going to happen. And so that's the way Yehovah works with this ministry.
That's right.
And so when you give to this ministry, you are giving to future warning for believers.
That's right.
Because like Ted was saying, you know, Michael taped things 10 years ago that are happening now. We don't understand. It's like Daniel being given a prophecy. He writes it down going, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to write it down. Same thing when we broadcast something. This has the very real potential. We don't know.
That's right.
We have the real potential to warn people in the future of what something's going to happen just by having a guest in to teach something. That teaching only happens if you give, because that person's got to fly here. They got to have a hotel room.
Oh, yes.
We got to, you know, there's all kinds of things that happen to put this on online.
Yes.
It's just because you see it free on YouTube doesn't mean it was free to produce.
That's right.
So we really appreciate you giving, because that literally you are warning people in advance of things we don't even know yet.
That's right.
That's the beautiful thing.
That's right. And ladies and gentlemen, you have got to know that we here at the Rood Crew, we thank you so much. You are family to us, and we just love each and every one of you, and we just thank you once again for your support. But you know what, Scott? We need your prayers too. We really, really love your prayers. It really helps us get through the day as well. So thank you not only for your giving, but for your prayers for the ministry and for Michael as well.
Indeed. All right, money is not what we were always taught it was, and as it turns out, we shouldn't save it the way we were always taught either. So what is true wealth? Josh Tolley explains in the 3rd episode of the Parable of the Talents. The Kiddush with Michael is next, so get your bread and wine and meet us back here in 2 minutes.
Buying businesses is often perceived as something reserved for the worldly rich. But that's not true. In fact, it's not biblical. And it's more attainable than you think.
Small business ownership worldwide employ way more people than big corporations, have a much larger economic impact than large corporations. Not only do we need to understand that and appreciate it, but we got to get God's people owning them.
In Business Ownership for Believers, Josh Tolley shows you how to scale the acquisitional wealth strategy of multinational companies to something you can use right now. It's simple, it's achievable, and you may be surprised at the creative ways you can do it. This teaching is not available anywhere online, but we'll give it to you as our thanks for supporting A Rood Awakening International. When you donate $50 as a love gift to this ministry in December, we'll send you Business Ownership for Believers with Josh Tolley on DVD or Blu-ray. Donate $100 and we'll send you Business Ownership for Believers, plus a gold-plated replica pendant from the 7th century depicting a menorah, shofar, and Torah scroll. Donate $300 and we'll send you Business Ownership for Believers, the gold-plated replica pendant, and a frosted glass table lamp featuring Yeshua's words from John 8:12, I am the light of the world. These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Thank you. Your donations ensure that important teachings like Business Ownership for Believers keep coming from A Rood Awakening International. Use your smartphone to scan the QR code on your screen to donate now and receive these limited time gifts, or call 888-766-3610, or get your gifts online with a donation at monthlylovegift.com. If you like what you see on Shabbat Night Live, you'll love the bonus episodes, now available only on the michaelrood.tv app. These bonus episodes dive deep to give you more serious study, cutting-edge content, and righteous raves you won't find anywhere else. It's Michael Rood Uncut. Sign up now to get the michaelrood.tv app free for 14 days. It's everything Michael Rood, plus all new bonus episodes you won't find anywhere else. Sign up to watch now at michaelrood.tv.
Some of the traditions in modern-day Judaism are what Yeshua said are takanot, laws which change biblical law, which are forbidden, and Yeshua said don't do them. But other traditions are remembrances of good things in the past, and they are a shadow picture of good things to happen in the future. On the Sabbath, we take 2 challah loaves, 2 loaves of bread. This represents the manna, the double portion that we received on the 6th day. This was God's provision for us. And this is what it continues to mean to us today. When Yeshua, just before his crucifixion, the night before his crucifixion, at the Last Supper that he had with his disciples, he took bread and he blessed, not the bread, he blessed the Most High. And he said, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And he broke the bread and he said, this is my body, which is broken for you. As often as you do this, remember this. By his stripes, we were healed. And then he took the cup and he said, in the prayer of Melchizedek to Abraham, Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this, what you have been doing for 1,000 years from the time of Abraham, this represents the renewed covenant in my blood. This is how I will pay for the broken covenant. I will pay the death penalty and do this until I come.
If I've told you once, I've told you a million times. Don't believe everything you see on CNN. We're not losing this war. It's not like all is lost. Oh, here comes the globalists and it's all over for us. We might as well just gather our stuff and hunker down and get ready for the crash because here it comes and brace for it. Nope, that's not the way it is it, Josh?
It's not the way it is at all.
Thank you for joining us again. Josh Tolley.
Great to see you again,
Yes.
Scott.
So tell us, global economy versus local economy. So we're told that this is the way the world's going. You will come with us. It's all going to be a global economy, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, that's not how this is at all. So we need to realize the devil only has one trick. From Genesis to Revelation, this dude only has one trick, and that's to tell us whatever we think isn't. Look at Adam and Eve. Surely he didn't mean.
Yeah, did God say?
Right. Same thing with Jesus in the wilderness, right? The same thing with Job. Well, Job a little bit different, but you get the point. Like he only convinces us of something that's not really real, and then counts on us reacting to it as if it is. So it really leads to the question, who's bringing the defeat, him or us? And he's convincing us we're defeated. And that's not the case. And globalization of the economy is a great example of this. Yes, they're trying to do a global currency. Yes, they're trying to do everything that we talked about. And they might have some measure of success for it. But when sin and evil rises, so too does righteousness. It's just a biblical principle. And we're seeing that. Since the whole, change in the world that everybody is now feeling, yes, there are gender issues every day in the news. But how many states have now passed gender bills saying, no, you can only compete if you're actually a girl? How many states have now passed bills that say, no, you can only use the girls' bathroom if you're a girl? And we're winning these situations. The same thing with abortion. How many states? We just beat Roe v. Wade, and everybody's acting as if we're losing. This is ridiculous. This would be like watching a football game. Our team is up 14-3, and we're whining instead of running up the score.
Well, that happens if you're an Alabama fan. But anyway, continue.
Are there really Alabama fans?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not one of them. I'm wearing Arkansas socks right now. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
But the analogy is true. We're winning in all these things. It's now becoming illegal to process food out of the country in some states and label it as if it was here. Multiple states are passing bills that say the Chinese government cannot buy land. Like if you actually look at all of the things we're winning on, I would bet that most viewers are completely unaware that we're winning. The reason the other side is having a complete tantrum is because they're not winning. And we see this with, Disney movies that are making nothing. Meanwhile, you have The Sound of Freedom that made over $100 million stinking dollars. You have, Bud Light, and I'm not encouraging drinking, but you have Bud Light that totally went through the floor. Yet you have these other brands, these smaller brands that because of their situation are gobbling up market share that they normally wouldn't have. And we really have to say, oh my goodness, this works. Let's do more of it. And that's where we have to get to. And that's why we have to examine some of these topics in deeper sort of analysis. Where should we really go with what we have?
That's a good point. So, wealth is being extracted from us when we think we're being good stewards. So that, we want to be good stewards of what Jehovah has given us. Bringing up that parable of the talents once again. That seems to be a theme here.
Yeah.
But so we think, okay, I just have to keep it safe. I just have to. Well, that's not what Jehovah told us. He didn't tell us to keep it safe.
Right.
In fact, he gave us hack for putting it, or for even thinking about putting it in the ground.
Yes.
But that's what we're doing with things like traditional, 401ks, investment opportunities. Thank you. Yeah. So what should we be doing?
Well, we have to look at these investment opportunities and say, how do they actually work, and is it really being a good steward? So let's just start with something really simple. Let's start with gold and silver. Everybody's like, okay, well, obviously the American economy might falter. I'm going to buy gold and silver. You have to really ask yourself, though, why are you buying it, and what do you think you're going to do with it? So case in point, if you think right now gold is a intrinsically valued offset to market operations, you're wrong. Gold every day is set by the same central banks that set the price of money. If we rewind the clock, they made owning gold illegal. Everybody had to hand it in. Even your grandma had to give in her ring. So gold was illegal, and now they set the price. So if the economy stays the same, you're never going to see gold spike. And that's why all these people, these gold experts are like, we don't know why it's not, going through the ceiling. Because it can't. The price is set by the same guy who set the price for the money. Duh. Okay, well, Josh, can it be a market offset if the market totally crashes? Depends. Did you buy gold certificates and they have it some vault in Switzerland? Then no, because you're not getting it. Are you keeping it in gold coins in the closet? Maybe, but how many gold coins are you really gonna have? Nobody I know, even rich people, nobody I know has like their entire retirement in physical gold coins sitting in the back closet. Again, we vanity buy. Oh, I have some silver. Yeah, how much? $500. Okay, that's not gonna do nothing.
Right.
So let's get real, right? And then we even have to say, what does the actual gold look like? So for example, let's say the economy crashes, China takes over, whatever your apocalyptic view happens. You are stuck with a silver coin that says $1 US. And you've been told by the silver experts that one silver coin used to buy a grocery cart full of food. Yep, that is absolutely true. Ron Paul was right. However, now let's say you are in a bad part of Charlotte, and you need to somehow convince that store owner that that silver dollar that says dollar on it is worth a grocery cart full of food. Most people are not as smart as the viewers of this show. Most people do not study these topics. So they're going to look at that and go, no, man, it's a coin. You're not getting food for a coin. Well, now what? That means we have to carry around bullion and somehow break it off? Like, we really have to think about this stuff when it says, is this where we put it? And I say that, and I know somebody out there is going to be collecting gold, and they're going to feel like I just shot their dog. But even though I say that, I own gold and silver too, but we do have to take a look at these. So that's gold and silver. If we look at the next thing, let's say real estate. I own real estate, so let's preface it with that. Yay, real estate. But that's not the wealth creator that we think it is, and it's certainly not the wealth creator that these Insta gurus on social media want us to think it is. Even if you do forced appreciation through a rental property, you're not increasing the value of that property enough to really create wealth. Now, is it a sound place to put some money because it traditionally goes up over time? Absolutely, which is why I own it. But if you really look at the people who say, oh, well, more millionaires were created out of real estate, there's an asterisk to that. How people make money in real estate is selling real estate as an investment tool. So like a REIT or a syndication deal. Let's say I own a REIT.
And what's a REIT? Just so people...
Real estate investment trust.
Okay.
So let's say it's a company that goes out, raises money, and then buys real estate with your money. Let's say I start one. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start a real estate investment fund, and you're going to invest $100,000 with me. I, as manager, get 2% management fee. So I get $2,000 a year just cuz. Now I'm going to put your money into that house. Now I also have what's called a carry fee. So when we do sell that house, I'm going to get 20% of whatever we sold it for. How much money do I have in that house? 0. Now I do that for 4,000 people. I got $4 million out there. I'm making 2% of that as my yearly income, and I get 20% when we sell it for 8. Well, that means I'm going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars on something I have no money in. That's how money is made in real estate. It's not by grandma owning a duplex and renting out the other side. I'm sorry, that's good, but it's not how you create wealth. And the same is true when we look at a lot of these sort of Wall Street-based investments. When you look at, like, even Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett put $100 into his business. And I know people are like, no, it's got to be more than that. No, it's not. He put $100 into his business. He formed a corporation. He had other people invest in that corporation. And please understand, I'm not saying what he did was wrong, immoral, or illegal. I'm just saying people don't understand how the wealth was actually made. He had other people put money into this corporation. It then became an entity which he bought Berkshire Hathaway with, which was a publicly traded company that made textiles. He then turned that textile business into an investment vehicle to do exactly what I just explained with the real estate. He now gets you to invest your $100,000 in it. Berkshire gets a management fee, and they get a carry fee on whatever profits are made. So it's not his money in Wall Street that he made money off of. It's your money in Wall Street Street that he made off of. And you're then sitting at home thinking, oh, a 10% return is great. Meanwhile, his actual return is in the hundreds of millions of percent because it's not his money.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And when you look at it that way, you quickly start realizing we've been lied to. And that's true with your 401k, your wonderful mutual fund. I don't care if it's with Vanguard or Main Street, or it doesn't matter. It's the system itself. This Wall Street system itself is created now, not originally, but now, to extract wealth out of the middle class. And it's provable because of all the different financial products that they continue to create just to sell something to you. Originally, it was invented under the tree. You get the whole analogy. We all get together and we need money to, start our shipping company, and we all can get some shares. Totally makes sense. Totally legit, yay. But it has turned into a bunch of professional money managers who are now selling financial products on behalf of another entity, typically a corporation, and they're using that exchange as the business, not the business as the business.
So people look at that and go, okay, I want to be successful like these guys and have these good ideas and all that, but they might say, okay, well, Josh, when that $100 was put in way back when by Warren Buffett, well, we can't do that anymore. That's not going to work anymore. That system doesn't even exist anymore. That ship has sailed. But you say that when we talk about the wealthy 1%, we don't need to just look at the people like Warren Buffett. That's really a whole lot more people than we think.
Oh yeah, and that brings up this really good concept about what is wealth disparity. Is there wealth inequality in this country? Sure. We don't control that anyway, so to talk about it's kind of a moot point because I don't think anybody elected you, and I'm not elected, so it's kind of irrelevant. But it's not what people think it is. We have this idea that we hear all the time, 10% of this country is doing financially fine, and 1% of this country is wealthy, and the rest of us have to be poor. That first, on its face, is an absolute lie. Our poor people today are wealthier than the King of England was 150 years ago, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. We have a bunch of socialists out there trying to convince people that it's the number, not the quality of life. So case in point, I saw a guy asking for money on the street, and I didn't have any cash, and he said, that's okay, he takes Venmo.
You're serious?
I'm serious. I'm serious, because he got a prepaid phone from Walmart, downloaded the app, and he now takes Venmo. What? He has a cell phone, right? And I'm not saying that poor people on the street aren't poor. That's not what I'm saying.
He's an entrepreneur, that guy.
He's an entrepreneur. But I'm trying to paint a contrast. If you look at what qualifies as poor in Western society now, it's typically 2 cell phones, television, internet, cable, air conditioning, rental assistance. You're not poor. The king in 1805 had no running water in the castle, had no central air, had no oven to cook things with. They had to start a fire. The cooks in the kitchen were usually naked, not kidding, because it had to be so hot. The quality of life for somebody in America making 20 grand a year is higher than the King of England 150 years ago. So we have to kind of stop and say, well, are we really, talking about inequality, or are we talking about quality of life? And people like Bernie Sanders want to address it as if it's the quality of life. So let me ask you a question. If Jeff Bezos had $1 trillion and you had enough to buy a home, have a second car, go on vacation every year, have all your needs met, are you suffering because of that?
No.
So who cares how unequal it is?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, Solomon was the wealthiest person that ever existed. Did God say, how dare he look at this wealth inequality? And we have to take a really stark look at the difference between wealth inequality and quality of life gap. When you look at it that way, it's nowhere near what we're taught it is. Not only that, let's take it a step further. We now use net worth to come up with the number. Net worth is irrelevant. The average billionaire has less than $20 million in cash.
Because it's all wrapped up in stuff?
Because it's all wrapped up in stock. And that stock is artificially inflated. So let's take Tesla for an example, not to anything against Elon or Tesla, but let's just take Tesla. Tesla is the most valuable car company in the history of the world based on its stock price. Now, it will make less cars this year than GM will this week, but somehow it's the most valuable one ever in the history of the planet. Well, that's not true. Like, on actual book value, it's not worth as much as GM. But now, because we're going on net worth, we take a look at this inflated price that Tesla's supposedly worth, give whatever portion Elon owns of that, and now that's considered his net worth. That's not a fair indicator of poor and rich, because 90% of that money doesn't actually exist. Does that make sense?
It does.
So then let's take it one step further still. Now, they tell us 1% are these evil rich people. Well, there's 350 million people in this country. 1% of that is 3.5 million people. 3.5 million people didn't meet at Denny's last week to conspire against everybody else. Additionally, we now have close to 17 million millionaires in this country. This is something, again, that Bernie Sanders doesn't want you to know, because we only have 125 million households, which means more than 1 in 10 people in this country is a millionaire. So as much as they love to complain about how the wealthiest guy with 7 yachts is, bazillions of times wealthier than everybody else, they're not given an accurate picture of wealth, quality of life, and real wealth in disparities.
So bringing you back to that guy who was taking Venmo on the street.
Yeah.
And back to the guy in the hut who's perfectly happy having a goat and a couple of chickens.
Yeah.
So do we need to maybe re-examine what the word wealth means? I mean, it's not all about money and disparity, and because this person has that, and that means that person is not happy,
Very much so. Very much so. When you look at this as a whole picture and you kind of zoom out and you realize it doesn't take money to be happy. I'm not saying that. Money isn't what we were taught it was. You don't put money where we thought you put money in the first place. You really start asking yourself, well, what does it take to be wealthy then? And obviously health and a relationship with God is there. Obvious. But even from a financial mobility standpoint, it doesn't always take money. Like, let's say, for example, the economy crashes, and I have a warehouse full of feminine hygiene products, batteries, diapers, ham radios. I'm going to be wealthier than somebody who has $1 million in the bank, because I have that valuable item that the money actually only represented anyway. If you remember going back to episode 1, we were talking about how money is just a representative tool. Well, the key to wealth is to get on the other sides of the tool. Get on the other side. Does it represent people who are going to buy something? That makes sense. If I had a pool of buyers, I'm wealthy. Does it represent the thing that they're buying? Yes. So if I made it or supplied it, I'm wealthy. The money can completely go away, and the system will auto-fill in whatever's next to complete that transaction. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So when we know that that's what money really is and that's where wealth is really created, it allows us to put our focus then on one of those two sides. And wealth is going to change. Because one of the things that I find interesting, even with this idea of inequality, Twitter followers, Instagram followers are wealth. If you have 1 million followers on Instagram, you have power. If you have 1 million followers on Instagram, you can get free meals, you can get free cars. So that's money. Does that make sense? Like, it's literally a form of money. Well, wait a second. Do I get to complain to Bernie Sanders because somebody has 1 million followers and I only have 40? So if followers are going to be the new social money, do we get to leverage that out too? And that's where this conversation goes really deep. And that's why it's so important that people understand, especially believers, understand what money is, how it's created, how to store it, and how to take advantage of the system in play.
And maybe the greatest part of all that is, supply and demand. So when things really hit the fan and people who are not depending on God have nothing, then you're going to be the wealthiest guy in that group because you got the one thing they want. And that's faith.
Yeah.
Tell me about how to have hope that there's something beyond this. Now you're wealthy.
Now you're wealthy.
You got the key, or you got the corner on the market.
Which is why, I mean, even as sad as it sounds, there are miraculous stories that came out of the Holocaust. There's miraculous stories that come out of these hurricanes. And like, why do we discredit God so much that we have to fit him inside of a dollar bill? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Let's come back to that. All right, so thank you for donating to this ministry. That's what makes this happen. That's how you brought Josh here. Thank you very much. And we're going to give you a couple more minutes to consider another donation so that others can see this into the future. Thank you for doing it. We'll be right back. Thanks for supporting Shabbat Night Live. Before the break, actually during the break, Josh, you and I were talking about the two sides of wealth. There's wealth storage and wealth creation.
Yes.
And there's a great example in the Bible. We're going to get into like ancient times and now modern times. You know, with technology, how does that change things?
Sure.
Brought about by someone here who's helping us in the crew today. But so let's go back to the ancient example. So Joseph. You say there's a good example of storage?
Yeah. See, now, again, you know, people confuse where do we store money and does it actually produce wealth? And we talked about real estate is storage, that's not creation. 401k is storage, not creation. Gold is storage, not creation. And Joseph serves as a great example of this. They knew a famine was coming, just like we know a change is coming. And they stored up the wealth, AKA grain, in these storage bins, in the granaries. But that didn't create more wealth. It wasn't like a Jesus miracle where they put some in and it multiplied. It just stored it up.
Right.
And the stored wealth sustained them while they were waiting for the opportunities to come back. And that's what you really store money up for. And Warren Buffett, going back to him as an example, is a great example of this because he's sitting on a ton of cash. And people, the experts, were asking him, why are you doing that? You're losing like 4% a year to inflation. And he goes, great, I'll lose that. That's fine, because I'm holding on to the grain, and once this thing crashes, I'm gonna use it to gobble up all these other sort of assets. So Joseph is a great example of wealth storage, not wealth creation.
Now, how does that change with the technology now? Like there's all kinds of crazy things happening. You mentioned the Robin Hood incident. Bring that up.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, Robin Hood's interesting. The thing about Robin Hood, first, we get that story wrong, the actual story, not the app. But the story of Robin Hood, we have this idea that Robin Hood stole from the wealthy to give to the poor, right? That's what we were taught. No, he was wealthy. He stole from the government to give to the people. He stole from the sheriff of Nottingham. He's like, anyway, that's just a little tangent, but it's something we totally get wrong. And we use as an example of, see, the rich shouldn't have. No, it was a rich guy that came back who took it back from the government and gave to the people. And that's a much better example than the one socialists want us to think it actually taught. But anyway, to the app, but the app's a great example too of how this changes things. Because if you remember Robinhood, the app, one, it opened up investing to like people with $10, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you go really back in time to 1950s, you needed a broker and a brokerage account and a certain amount of money. And then came along, you know, internet trading, Charles Schwab, that chunked it down even further. And then Robinhood came along and said, dude, we'll sell you fractions of a share. And it was a great power shift, but it also displayed something that kind of proved that where you're storing your money in Wall Street might not be as safe as you want it to be. And that was the scenario with GameStop, right? So GameStop was declining in stock price. And again, Wall Street and these companies are not based on actual value. They're based on stock price. It's a casino.
Right. And GameStop, by the way, was a bricks and mortar video game store.
Yeah, for context, yeah, it was a brick and mortar store, and their stock price started falling. And a bunch of rich people decided to short that stock, which means bet against it. They were hoping that it continued to fall. And because of social media and because of apps like Robinhood, a bunch of people could say, well, you know what? I hate rich people. So let me go in here and I'm going to buy some of this stock and it's going to raise this price. And as that stock price rose, it put in a very perilous situation all of these short investors. And once that happened, they now had to pay fees to keep the short in place. And they ended up losing a bazillion stinking dollars because of the power that the normal people had in a system that the enemy sort of created, which illustrates our point before. It doesn't matter what Klaus Schwab and his weird friends come up with. We're the economy. We're the cow. We get to decide how this turns out.
Now, speaking of things that we can do, you educated me on something that I had never thought about before as another wealth storage vehicle.
Yes.
And that is insurance. And people might say, insurance? Well, wait a minute. Isn't that just, like life insurance? And then there's this whole life thing versus term, and I don't even understand it all. How do I use that for wealth storage and even like retirement saving, really?
Yes. Yeah. So insurance is a lot older than people think. Insurance is written on the Babylonian stone. It's old. And there's always been this idea that insurance can work because it's not based on markets, it's based on math. And this is really important to understand before we even get into options. If you look at the stock market, it goes up and down every day. If you look at gold and silver, it goes up and down every day because of the market that's determining the price. But if we had 1,000 people who all have homeowners insurance, how many of them do you think on average are going to have a homeowner's claim? Maybe 3, 4, which means the 3 or 4 are losses. It's going to take about 10 to cover the losses, but that means those other 985 or whatever we're at are all profit. So regardless of what the market does, the fact that it's based on math creates a profit, which is why insurance is one of the most stable industries that has ever existed. I mean, people have heard 47 times or 41 times the banks have crashed, 40 some odd times Wall Street has crashed. Nobody's heard of the great insurance crash of 19 never. Because while individual insurance companies might falter, the system itself doesn't, because it's based on math. Now, with that being said, even if you look at examples like AIG, because people say, oh, well, Josh, AIG almost crashed. Almost doesn't count. But if you look at that case, it was actually their mortgage arm that crashed AIG, and it was the insurance arm that saved it.
Oh, really?
Yes. Insurance has always been this powerful tool. If you remember back to It's a Wonderful Life, that movie was not about Christmas or Zuzu's petals or Angel's wings. That movie's about a bank crash. George Bailey owns a bank, and it crashes. And he goes running into Drew Barrymore's office, or John Barrymore, whichever Barrymore Mr. Potter was played by. And he says, Mr. Potter, Mr. Potter. And he reaches in his pocket and grabs an insurance policy to save his bank. Right over our heads. If you look at every farmer at the turn of the 18th into 19th century, you would find most of them engaged in insurance products in order to keep the farm in the family. And this is a great example. What happens now is, let's say Grandpa has a farm and it's 100 acres. Grandpa dies, Uncle Sam's comes calling, right? Well, they are land rich, cash poor. So what happens is the family has to sell off 20 acres or something in order to pay Uncle Sam. And then Dad gets it, Dad dies, they sell another 20 acres. And every year now, the family farm gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Family business gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, what they would do in the past is they would use insurance. So when Grandpa died, the insurance paid Uncle Sam and left enough money to buy another 100 acres. And then when Dad died, the insurance paid Uncle Sam and left enough money to buy another 100 acres. And we were expanding our wealth through insurance. So if that makes sense, we can dig into more of the details.
So where did we go wrong there? I mean, it appeared like that was the right idea.
I love insurance. Now, none of this I invented, nor did anybody else who's alive, but it's a great place to store wealth because it allows us some advantages. But before I get to that, to answer your question, we went wrong when we allowed banks to start doing fractionary lending. So banks can lend out more money than they have on deposit. That doesn't make sense. Like, let's say you put $100 into Josh Bank and I make money on lending it out, that makes sense. But if I could lend out $600 because you put in $100, I'm not making 5% on that bicycle loan. I'm making 500% because that money never existed. Well, if you're the financial industry, what would you rather sell? Something where you make a nice but organic, wholesome profit? Or something where you can take money, multiply it by a fictitious number, and make hundreds of % interest? That one. So you can actually watch the elimination of insurance as a financial tool as we rose in bank and Wall Street options as alternative places to invest it. And then we get this crazy term, or this expression, buy term and invest the difference, because of that. This sort of wrong myth mathematically that somehow you can buy term insurance, invest the difference between that and whole life into the stock market, and that will outperform. Statistically, it doesn't happen, even though Ted said it years and years and years and years and years ago. So when you look at insurance, and there's a lot of variation, so this is a topic in and of itself, but some of the key features and advantages are insurance grows tax-free. Wait a second. Tax-free? Josh, nothing's tax-free. Yeah, it is, and everybody watching knows it. When you crash your car and it's $500 to fix it, do they tax that check? Nope. When your house burns down and they send you $100,000 to rebuild it, do they tax that check? Nope. When Uncle Bob dies and leaves the nephews $10,000 in life insurance, is that even taxed? Nope. Insurance has always been tax-free. We were just never taught to put our money there. But interestingly enough, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, on their presidential campaign forms, they all did. So all of them are putting their money in insurance where it can grow tax-free. And when it's growing, it's actually compounding compared to what you're doing in Wall Street. And this is really key if we have time to explain it.
Please, yep.
When you put money in Wall Street, let's say you buy in and you buy stock at $100 and it goes up to $150. Is that interest? No. Your financial planner is going to tell you that it's compounding interest. It's not. Interest has two legal definitions. One, cash paid on a financial product, or two, increased ownership of something. So for example, if I borrowed you $100 to buy a bicycle at 5%, you have to pay me $5 in actual cash. You can't say the value of the bike went up. Or if I have 10% ownership in your wellness company and my interest goes up to 12%, I own now 2% more than I used to. Makes sense. Well, when you buy a stock and it goes from 100 to 150, they don't pay you in cash. If you have to sell the asset in order to realize the gain, it is not interest. And that's really important for people to understand. I don't care what your financial planner calls it, it's not interest. Now, to add insult to injury, when I buy in again next month, do I get to buy in at the $100 that I originally bought in at? No, I now have to buy in at 150. So wait a second. If it cost me $50 more this time and I gained $50 last time, I'm net what? Nothing.
Right.
The only thing that is happening is I'm buying more of an appreciating asset, which can be good, but it is by no way, shape, or form interest, and it's certainly not compounding. When an insurance company pays you its dividends, it pays you in cash. Meets definition 1. Or you can say, hold the cash, I'll take more ownership of insurance. Meets definition 2. So short of owning a bank, insurance is the only way that most of us have the ability to realize real compounding interest, and it grows tax-free. If you take those two elements alone, it is the most powerful financial tool most families have available to them. Sadly, it's no longer taught.
That seems one of those things where we need to listen to a believer in order to accomplish the, if you've been given 10 talents, you need to know what to do with it.
Right.
So go and make 10 more.
Right.
And this is a great way to make 10 more.
It is, and in full disclosure, I'm a licensed insurance agent, right? I took all the tests years ago. And right in the test, depending on the state you're testing in, it'll tell you point blank that term is never designed to pay you. So I am not talking about term, VUL, IUL, anything like that. Certainly nothing that comes from a direct sales or multi-level marketing company, but real product that for a long time has been restricted in its availability, and even today is never publicly advertised on television. It's a system of products that for a long time the wealthy only had access to.
Now you had told me previously too that this is the way that the company or the families we all know in America, like the Rockefellers, folks like this, they took advantage of that.
Absolutely true, because if you think about it, this is the only way really to ensure that provide for your children and your children's children. So let's say, for example,
a biblical example.
The biblical example, go figure, right? Which is why the Bible even has insurance. So if you think about it, let's say me and my wife have $1 million and we die and we have 4 kids. Each kid gets $250, right? No, Uncle Sam's gonna come and he's gonna take a haircut off of all of it. And then they're gonna live their life with it, which means by the time it gets to my grandkids, they're not getting anything. And statistically, even if you have $50 million, it's never gonna make it to generation 3. However, if me and my wife have $1 million placed with the insurance company, I get to use that $1 million while I'm alive, and it bought insurance typically way more than what I put in. So let's say $4 million, just so I can do the math on the spot. Now when I die, my kids get $4 million tax-free because it's insurance. So now the Uncle Sam doesn't get a haircut. And my family requires, because it's set up in a family trust, that the kids have a policy on them which replenishes the trust. So now if each kid now puts 4 back in, we're not left with 4, now we're at 16. Now the 16 million goes to the grandchildren who all put in 4. Now we're at 48. Now the great-grandchildren, and you see what I'm saying?
Wow.
And this is how families perpetually create wealth. But instead, they teach the poor people to buy 401ks. Isn't it funny how wealthy people don't own stock? Wealthy, other than the stock in their own company, wealthy people don't own 401ks. Wealthy people don't blah, 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 fill in the blank. And we love to point to the neighbor or the millionaire next door, but the worst thing you could possibly be is a mutual fund millionaire. If you look at actual wealthy people, less than 5% of their wealth is in Wall Street outside of whatever they might own. So like Elon owns Tesla. So they're not putting it in Wall Street. Less than 10% of it's in the bank. Where is most of their wealth? It's in entrepreneurship activities and insurance.
Now speaking, okay, you brought up an interesting point. There's even insurance in the Bible.
Yes.
Okay, what is this?
So I don't remember where it is exactly because that would be a Michael question. But there's this replenishment for loss, and that's what insurance actually is, right? So insurance is to say, okay, Scott, if you insure your car and you crash it, what is the risk of loss and can I replenish that risk? And for replenishment, there's a fee for that service. And that exists. They don't call it insurance. It's not like,
right, but you must give it back plus 20%. That whole concept in the Torah.
Right.
Okay. I never thought about it like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There has to be a system of replenishment. There has to be. And that's always existed, which is why every small town in America, if you look at Main Street, there's going to be a sandstone etched building that says insurance and trust. And we're not talking about farmers bumper to bumper, like older than that. But it's in every small town in North America.
Now, places like California that are getting out of insurance,
Florida too.
State Farm, they got out of it?
Out of Florida, yeah.
Why? Why did they do that?
So there's a lot of reasons. A lot of it has to do with regulation. It has to do with cost of insurance. It has to do with what the government says you have to cover. It has to do with what that replenishment fund looks like. Because what you have to remember is, unlike a bank that can lend out multiple times of money they don't have, insurance companies can only cover for what they actually have, which is, again, why you very, very rarely hear of an insurance crash, because they actually have to have it.
And that almost seems like a more biblical model.
Way more biblical.
Because, lending out more than you have, well, that seems a little underhanded, like you're...
you're a money changer and your table needs to get flipped over.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great comparison. But then based on what is being asked of those insurance companies are leaving those states, which should be a huge red flag to Democrat and Republican leadership to say, hey, how do we get insurance companies to stay?
Wow. Okay. So Josh, you mentioned that you can set up this kind of thing for people. So
we can,
if people after Shabbat, of course, want to look into this, where do they go to find more info and ask you about it?
Yeah, so I have a series of websites. One of them is www.shiftcapital.com with a hyphen between shift, and shift is SHYFT. They can go there. That's the insurance-based company that we have. JoshTolley.com is obviously a hub for getting in touch with us for anything. And then we have another company called KingsbridgeBrokers.com, which we're going to talk about in a future episode.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Well, I hope people are encouraged by this, because we can be the head and not the tail. It's okay to talk about money. It's okay to talk about wealth. It's in the Bible. Solomon was very wealthy. All these people were very wealthy, but they did good things with it. And that's the difference.
Right.
Believers can do good things with this kind of wealth, and we need to recognize that and not be afraid to talk about it. So,
amen.
Thank you for talking about it, and thank you for listening. So we'll see you next week with more from Josh Tolley. Until then, Shavua Tov. Have a good week.